This is Find Your Flow, a show about navigating the complexities of life and business through the lens of curiosity. I'm your host, Angelique, and I bring together experts to deliver responsibly curated conversations and perspectives that aim to progress people and the planet. Have you ever pondered the opportunities that shaped your own educational journey? How might those same opportunities provide freedom for generations to come? In this episode, we dive into transformative stories of empowering every learner, opening doors long shut, and igniting the flames of limitless potential. We explore what happens when we empower all to be fully human and the incredible journey of an organization whose mission is just that. Centered in Raleigh, Empower All Inc. aims to bridge the gaps between home, school, and the community. And its founder, our guest, Valencia Harris, will leave you inspired, questioning, and ready to rewrite the narrative of education for generations to come. Valencia Harris is the president and founder of Empower All Inc. She is an educator that has taught both elementary and STEM education for over 12 years and is a doctoral candidate studying educational equity at North Carolina State University. Her educational and career experiences have fueled her drive to diversify the teacher pipeline, push culturally relevant pedagogy as standard, increase the presence of students of color in STEM, and create educational opportunities for all students. So Valencia, welcome. Thank you so much for joining us today and taking time to share your story. To kick us off, tell us where it all started. How did Empower Inc. come to be?
Well, first of all, thank you so much for having me on, and hearing the introduction and hearing you read my vision and what the goal of the organization is still brings me chills. So Empower All Incorporated was established in 2020. It was one of those pandemic times where a team of us got together and decided to think outside of the box in a different way to truly make an impact on our youth that centered amplifying voices, identified and looking at issues that are happening within education, and charged us to take a leap of faith to try something different. So as you mentioned, I am a doctoral candidate in educational equity at NC State. And it was in my first semester that I realized that I was in for a long road, that it takes usually 4 to 7 years to complete a PhD program. And I don't have that type of time, right? When I think about what is happening and reflecting on my own young man, my son who's in kindergarten, I want to make an impact like yesterday. Yes. So I had a friend ask, what do you want to do when you graduate with this PhD? And at first I was like, I don't quite know. I don't really want to go into the academy in a traditional sense. I know that I want my dissertation to be living and breathing, and I want to stay close to the community, being able to keep a pulse on students and what is happening. So I decided to start a nonprofit. Disclaimer, I had no idea how to start a nonprofit. Totally went on Google and said, how to start a nonprofit, give me tips and strategies. And as I mentioned before, I called on 2 of my close friends and colleagues who are really committed to educational equity, who have an experience in working with young people, who also have expertise in areas that I don't. For example, my co-founder, Emily Wade, focuses on cultural linguistics. My other co-founder, Amanda West, focuses on literacy, early childhood and pre-K focus there. And so when we began to idea and come together and brainstorm, we continue to think about centering voices and making sure that each voice will be present within the organization. So building on all of that, thinking about my personal background and career expertise in elementary education and STEM with the emphasis on social emotional learning, we thought, how can we put all of this together to truly make an impact on our students? And with that, Empower All was birthed with our mission to empower all to be fully human, meaning pushing them to be their authentic selves, to truly be liberated, to be free, to live in the body that they were born in, and bringing in an emphasis on cultural affirmation and belonging, an emphasis on STEAM education, that's the science, technology, engineering, arts, and mathematics, really bringing in the arts. That's a key piece for us. And then bringing in that mental health piece, with what is happening in our world today, we recognize that mental health is an issue that folds into every aspect of life. So how can we bring that in to really help our students to live out a fully human life without worry, right? And then entrepreneurship is the fourth pillar that we added on. So all of those words to say, what do? We develop STEAM challenges that center identity and equity while supporting core instruction. As former educators, we're able to take these STEAM challenges, go back into the classroom, high five our former colleagues that are still in there hanging in the fight, and open up an opportunity for our historically marginalized students. We're talking our Black and Brown youth, and we're talking young ladies, and introducing them into STEM or STEAM careers at the elementary level.
Wow. That is, I mean, you saw an opportunity. You realize this can't wait. This can't wait. And action needs to happen now. And you pulled together the resources. You were resourceful using your own skill set, your own background, your own education to bring together a team to make this happen. And you're implementing it. So started in 2020. I mean, what is the impact and how many schools? How are you working with schools today? What does that look like?
Wow. I just did an impact report over the weekend. And with that, we have 4 school partnerships. Specifically, we target schools that are Title I schools or lower socioeconomic, a high population of those historically marginalized youth. So with that gives us access to approximately 4,000 students.
Wow.
And then more recently, we've been involved and partnered with the city of Raleigh, strategically choosing community centers that are underutilized, trying to breathe life back into them in a unique way that will help us bridge gaps, bringing home, bringing school, and bringing the community all together. So, and then attending community events. So with our community partners, whether it is an organization that focuses on homelessness, whether it focuses on food insecurity, or whether it's economic development, we try to be present and passing out free STEAM kits and getting them into the hands of young people.
And I was fortunate to see those firsthand at the food truck rodeo through Place at the Table Raleigh, and be able to see exactly what you're talking about too. And wow, 4,000 students around Raleigh alone.
Yes,
that's incredible. I mean, imagine if other communities and this, was to expand into all these other communities, the opportunities that would be present. When it comes to looking at educational inequities, what do you think are some of these key factors that contribute to that?
I think the biggest piece is access. So one thing that I haven't yet mentioned is that we have a junior board, and our junior board is comprised of middle and high school students. Well, why? Because I believe that they should have a seat at the table. A lot of the issues and things that we are fighting for, yes, are systemic issues. Yes, are issues that stem back decades, but I want to make sure we're staying relevant to what our students see and deem necessary that we should fight for and push for that change. And it helps me stay young at the same time. So when I look at like what is happening in education, we recognize broadband access is still an issue, that digital divide. We saw that during COVID, that's still an issue. Teacher recruitment and retention is still an issue. You breaking that down further, recruiting teachers of color is an issue. Funding, accountability. I mean, bringing in, I call it cultural pedagogies, though it's like culturally responsive or culturally sustaining pedagogies. Bringing that into the classroom. And again, an emphasis on that social emotional learning are all factors that play into the academic achievement of our young people.
Well, and by asking with the junior board, asking people that are going to be part of the generations to come, I mean, you can't go wrong when you just bring people to the table, ask these questions and get them thinking, because they're the ones that are in the moment, that are in these spaces and are able to provide feedback so that, as an organization, like any organization, that helps you grow, that helps you learn how to adapt for the future. The access is something that, I see a lot. I work in the well-being space, and that is the one thing that I get really frustrated by too, is like, wellness has become this like expensive initiative and these products that you have to have and the consumption that it comes to. But I'd argue that the people that need it most are the people that don't, might not be able to have access to those opportunities.
Right.
And it's a frustrating space. And, I love to hear that not only are you focusing on STEM initiatives, but you've added in entrepreneurship and arts and, like you said, mental health.
Right.
What I mean, like, which one do we start with here? Like the mental health. So let's talk about that. I mean, what are some of the programs that you're implementing, or is it every class that you bring in the mental health aspect? What does that look like for the students that you're working with right now?
Okay, yes, mental health is folded into every aspect of the work that we do. So we believe in restorative practices. We believe sitting in circle. I believe it's something about sitting in circle that brings unity and brings togetherness. You're talking to an old school Girl Scout, right? So a lot of the things that we did was in circle, So with that, we talk a lot about feelings. We talk a lot about empathy. We talk a lot about how our words have impact, and we build that in. Also, in my practice where I teach at state, there this past year, we had 14 suicides. And that's at the university level. And it's breathtaking. And when I received an email from 4 students that said, Miss Harris, unfortunately, I may not be in class on Tuesday because my friend committed suicide. That means we need to do something. We need to do something different.
Yeah.
We decolonize syllabi when we do diversity, equity, and inclusion. But I think we also need to decolonize it in a way that factors in mental health, that factors in wellness, not just a wellness day, but it really allows our young people to come in and just talk and breathe. We are still seeing the effects of COVID and the pandemic, and the pressure that our students are under now is at an all-time high. I mean, they're in-person learning, but they're still online learning. So they're doing this hybrid model. So the pressure that our youth are under, and then couple that with social media and what is happening in our world through that lens puts a lot of pressure on our students.
Yeah.
So we are very intentional about creating spaces where our students know that we see them, that we hear them, that they have a sense of belonging, and creating and cultivating that safe space anywhere we go.
It just gives me the chills to think about, because my neighbor works at NC State too, and has told me the same stories. And it's just like, it's not, like you said, a day off. It's not one day to get recoup. It's lifelong journey, and it has to be implemented every single day. And quite honestly, it's like sometimes for some of these students, going to classrooms might be the only solace or, time that they have to actually share. And with the pandemic, it's like, I've experienced this in my own mental health. Remote is great, and I'm grateful for it, but it doesn't replace the need for in-person connection and in-person community. And even like you said, old school learning circles.
Right.
That is huge. That's absolutely huge. And to create those spaces for students of all ages, I hope that we're just creating a next generation of more empathetic humans to come. And that is something that we'll see as new businesses and, educational sectors are developed. What are some of these effective strategies that you see that you're like, this is something that could work for a lot of different groups? And how can those be implemented to promote educational equity?
I really believe, and something that I didn't mention is, I believe the secret sauce to all of this is building authentic relationships. So building those authentic relationships that are transformative and that not transactional really play a role in it. And another big thing when it comes to mental health too is that we have to normalize the fact that it is okay to talk about mental health.
Yes.
We have to normalize it is okay to have a therapist. It is okay to go and see someone for help, to really just kind of talk it out and breathe, right? So with that, we saw that last year, and it's one of our first partners was Transcend Resource Solutions. And they are a mental health therapist that recognize they want to eradicate these barriers. And so as we were talking, we jokingly say that, especially within, I'm Black, right? So I could talk about this within my own culture and race, is that when you talk about needing help, our biggest thing is to go to church, and we go to church. Our biggest thing is to pray and talk to God, and we do that. But we also need to do an additive, a step further, and talk to a therapist. And we said, how can we address this? How can we break it down and normalize this in a way, which led us to having our first summit last year, which is called SMASH, Supporting Mental Health Advocacy and STEM Through Hip Hop. So we were able to utilize hip hop as the vehicle to
Yeah.
dive into conversations around mental health. And it really kind of opened it up in a way that it was like a concert, that when we talk about these heavy conversations, then you're able to be uplifted by musical artists, by seeing a graffiti artist spray painting, but really being in community. So to truly answer your second part of your question, I really believe that those ingredients are building relationships, because once you have that foundation, having that relationship, then anything can happen. Silos can be disrupted. True collaboration and partnership can happen to truly uplift our community.
That is such an important link to overall well-being, is community and those authentic relationships. And in the program that I'm in right now, we look at this wheel of health. And of course, it's fitness and nutrition and personal well-being. But what encompasses the entire circle of all these elements is community.
Yes.
And it's like you can do anything within community. And so if it is going to your church, if it is creating, and I love the idea of SMASH, creating a cultural experience where you break down the vulnerability barriers, you bring people into a space where they can feel comfortable. And then it's almost this, another layer of, when you know that you're there to express these things, everyone feels more comfortable too. So why shouldn't all places be like that? Really?
Right.
So another, and you mentioned this a little bit, so break down silos of working together. How can we do that in this space? How can we do that in education and even in our community here in Raleigh?
Man, so this definitely puts me on a soapbox, right? Especially with being a new nonprofit leader. And, for the past 2.5 years, I've had the opportunity to kind of sit on the outskirts and kind of watch how things work, how things navigate, how things are connected. And what I'm noticing is that we're all fighting for really important causes. We're all fighting for very similar things, whether it is diversity through race, diversity of thought, diversity of gender, or whatever have you. The need is still the same, that we want to do good, that we want to make a change, a positive impact for the well-being of our community, whether that is our family community that's in our own household, or whether that's a broader community of people who we associate with. So with that, I believe in partnering. I believe in coming together, disrupting the scarcity mindset. And I feel like STEAM education really opened my eyes to that. So my background was elementary education, where I taught kindergarten, first and second grade. And then a principal approached me and said, hey, we would like to pilot STEAM education here at our school, and we think you're just the person to do so. And I'm like, wait, hold on, no. My husband is the engineer. I had aspirations to be a domestic engineer. I don't know anything about STEM. And I was like, let me do my research and figure it out. He's like, no, you're really doing it. You do it daily, and you definitely do it in a way that impacts our youth. But with that, I was able to see how STEAM is really interdisciplinary. It folds into and brings in every aspect within education. It brings in your science, your math, your language arts, your history. It brings in a need for students to be able to increase their ability to communicate, to collaborate, to be creative, to be innovative. So, and to do critical thinking. So if STEAM education can work as a vehicle to show us that silos don't work, that it actually brings us together, then how can we take that opportunity to look at it in a wider realm within our community, to know how we can come together as a community, right? So even when we think about the pandemic, where the entire world shut down, well, during that time, a team of scientists came together and solved a major issue, which was creating a vaccine. So we see how it works when we come together as a team and truly as a community.
And why does it take a global pandemic for this to show us this sometimes too? My gosh. Yes. Yeah. And like you said, I mean, it's like, it's an aspect that plays into every corner of the educational system. Every single, aspect of it can relate back to STEAM. And I love how you said domestic engineer.
Yes.
I don't think I've heard this before. What is this?
That means a stay-at-home wife. I just want to stay home and take care of the babies.
I love it. I love it. I love that title for it. That's incredible. But yeah, again, like finding that community, but collaboration.
Yes.
And I'm reading this book right now called Blue Ocean Strategy, and it kind of breaks down, at least this first part of it is breaking down like you're not in competition with everybody.
Right.
Like there's room for everybody to do good.
Yes.
But what happens, in this sense, when we collaborate and we're able to provide so much more support to the communities and all communities,
Right.
I think there's still, I don't know how to break down that barrier. I think that's another aspect of ego, of systems, of, we can go down the path there, but yeah, that also makes me think too, is how can policymakers, other educators, how can other communities, just even in Raleigh, that might not be seeing this every day, how can they show up for these initiatives? How can they bring more of these initiatives, or at least the understanding, to more communities?
Right. Well, the first thing that I have to say is we have to increase teacher pay. We have to recognize how important teachers are. I said there was a talk that I gave a couple months ago, and I talked about it. I don't know how anybody got to where they are today without a teacher. So that is foundational. And it gives me chills every time I say that, because it's like, you wouldn't become a doctor, you wouldn't become an engineer, you wouldn't become this high-paying professional had it not been for a teacher who provided you with the foundational basis of learning, right?
Amen.
To activate your inner genius to help you become the person you are today.
Yes.
So we have to recognize and appreciate and respect our teachers. And I think about it too, like even with my own health, I don't want a crooked doctor who just gets paid minimum wage because I feel like I'm gonna get minimum service. So we know that teachers are taking money out of their own pockets. I did it. Yes. They're taking supplies out of their own homes. I did it. That to really, truly make an impact on our youth. And really, I feel like teaching is a gift, and it is a calling, and it is one that people underestimate and undervalue. So we have to change that. When we reflect back on the Brown v. Board of Education, where we lost and saw a mass exodus of our Black teachers, well, why? We have to really research that and know why. And it wasn't that, I personally believe, it wasn't that teachers of color at the time were saying that they wanted out. I think what we were fighting for were resources, to have adequate resources and access in the same way to make it equitable for all, right? So we lost that. And then with that, it's hard to recruit teachers to stay. I work in the College of Education, and every time I have a group of maybe 20 students, I just pray that they stay the course. I pray that they will end up becoming teachers and not deviate and move into other professions, because it is needed. So our policies, we have to increase teacher pay. We have to fold in financial literacy and educating our students on that. That's how we create that generational wealth. We have to create opportunities for our students to go into skills or trade. We don't have to push college or 2 or 4 year universities. We have to push that they have the ability to hone in on something they are good at and enjoy, because they'll stay in that. And we need those skilled and trade workers and vocational workers. We need that.
You got it.
So, and then we have to really focus on early childhood education. Again, increasing the pay for preschool and daycare providers, providing access for our youth to be able to enter into daycares without paying a mortgage payment every week for their children to go to school. We recognize and know that, unfortunately, kindergarten is now the new 3rd grade. So they have to come in with the background and with the knowledge and prior knowledge to really even have a bone in the fight, per se. So exposure, and any policy that can push for our youth to have access to education and families to have access to resources without the financial strain is going to be key.
Yeah. Oh. I can get me on a soapbox true about teacher pay, because you perfectly said it. It's like nobody in this world, and I hope there's nobody in this world that can't say a teacher inspired them. They're I am here. You are here because a teacher brought me to where I am today. I was so fortunate to have the opportunities that I did. And it boggles my mind. And I just felt like I'm getting heated, because the two professions that keep our world going and keep the generations running, nursing and education.
Yes.
And they're the two that we just, it's like the answer is right in front of us.
Right.
I guess so. I think, like, I mean, I even think about the well-being of our teachers. I have so many friends that went into teaching, and I would say maybe 50% of them are still doing it. Maybe. And the biggest reason I got burned out, I didn't feel valued, I wasn't appreciated. I can't make rent.
Right.
Like, financial concern is something that is part of wellness. It's part of well-being. It's part of being human, especially in today's age.
Right.
And so, I wish I could snap my fingers or understand how we can solve this problem, because it's one that has been ongoing for a very, very long time. But I hear you, and I want to echo that so much, because whatever policies or policymakers and people that we're voting in, we've got to prioritize that.
Right. I mean, I will take it a step further. And I went from a low paying profession to a nonprofit world where you have to like rely on asking people for funding or getting people to believe in your mission. And when I did my research, I probably should have dug a little deeper and realized that nonprofits that focus on education have a harder time of even getting funded, which blows my mind. So it's like, there are different nonprofits that focus on important concepts. Yes. Important ideas, important issues. Yes. But when we talk about education or we talk about mental health, these are things that we're digging at the roots, right? We're trying to like solve the problem or fix the issue or eradicate the barrier from the roots. Right. Yet we have to fight the hardest to even try to get funded. Like, so, woo, we have a lot of work to do, America. We have a lot to do.
Yes. Yes, to say the least. To that point, what can people like myself and our community, I mean, how can we rally around this? How can we make more voices heard to bring more funding to nonprofits like yourself, to education systems? What can we do?
I think just showing up and being true investors. And I'm not even just talking about from the financial standpoint, but I'm just talking about showing up with boots on the ground to truly make an impact and join in. So for us as an organization, we're developing these STEAM kits and we're assembling these STEAM kits. We're a team of 3. So anytime there are volunteer opportunities or corporate opportunities for employees to have a day of service to come and pause and help us assemble the kits is helpful. Hearing and listening out for and making those connections, connecting the dots to say, hey, I think these two organizations should come together and collaborate. That collaboration is key. Spreading the word and, paying attention to what is happening in our community, whether that's attending city council meetings, whether that's showing up at the Capitol. We have to show up. We have to show up and we have to use our voice and amplify voices that are often silenced, because usually they have the most powerful words that can really move us to change that. And they have the answer. We have just not taken the time to really listen.
Yes. Yes. Especially when you say that again, it's like the voices that are not heard are the ones that have those answers. And it's amazing as I do these interviews, so many of the commonalities that you hear from, people working in big global enterprises and the problems that they're facing and getting, it's just like, we have the answers to these things. Yes. I'm like, we need to do like 3 more of these episodes just to talk about, how we can show up better. And I think that was a great synopsis too, that, I hope the viewers listening can find ways to take action in their own communities, because this is, yes, we're grateful here. And I'm grateful for you here in Raleigh to be creating this experience. But this is also something that people all over the United States can start implementing today. Right. And if somebody was to come to you and say, okay, I live here and I grew up right outside of Detroit. What can somebody from Detroit say, okay, how can I do something like this here if they came to you?
Honestly, I would just hand them the model. I believe that I would hand them the model of what we're doing and being able to truly expand, and then asking them to identify what we're leaving out, what we're missing, because there's always something missing, because we all have come with a different lens. Yeah. So providing opportunity for us to sit down, share out what we are doing here, identify what the needs are in Detroit. They may be similar, but there also are areas that are probably different, and then tailoring it specifically to meet the needs in that area.
Yeah. Yeah, because we can learn a lot from these other areas too. What happens, and how they're fixing things or finding answers in Detroit could also impact what we're doing here in Raleigh, vice versa. But I like the point that you made, and it always has to come down to the community that you serve. That's
Yes,
not. There's no blanketed universal answer for things. It has to serve the people in front of us.
that's right.
Wow. Such an inspiring conversation. I can't thank you enough for sharing this. And I hope that, maybe we can inspire some folks to take action here as well. And in saying that, how can people find you? Where can we direct folks to get involved with Empower All?
Definitely. We have a website, www.empower-allinc.org. Social media is not my jam, but I try to use it. So we do have a Instagram page, and we try to keep that up to date and with information for upcoming events and how to reach out. So we are here. I tell people all the time, I had the same phone number since 1995. So if you reach out to me on the website, know that I will respond and find space for you to help us out.
I love it. Well, Valencia, thank you so much for sharing your story, and excited to see what, viewers that watch this, their response and feedback, and hopefully you'll get some calls in regards to setting this up in other cities across the US. So thank you again for joining us, but more importantly, thank you for what you and your team are bringing to our community.